Welcome to Sell Like You, the ultimate sales podcast that will teach you how to make sales your superpower, transform your mindset, and in doing so, explode your sales beyond your wildest dreams. I'm Harriet Meller, and over the last 17 years, I've helped hundreds of top companies around the world, including my own, make more money and qualify more leads using simple strategies that work. In this podcast, you'll learn how I generated over 10 million in annual sales, along with the sales techniques, processes, and tools that will work for you to generate more dream-aligned clients and scale your business beyond what you thought was possible. If you're sick of the boring, outdated, and pushy sales tactics of the past, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Sell Like You podcast as part of our Top Sales Tech series. And today I'm joined by the wonderful Jon Fox. Jon is the APJ Channel and Alliances Vice President at CrowdStrike. And I first met Jon in Bangkok as part of another vendor. They call them junkets. I call them vendor conferences. It was very official. And I'm saying that's over 7 years ago now. And so I'm excited that we're finally having this conversation recorded. But from distribution into channel, seeing both sides of the coin. Jon, hello, welcome. Give us your entrance into tech sales.
It is a long time ago we met, and I am getting older. I've got a few kind of grey hairs now. Look, my entry into IT or into sales really was probably a little bit of an unusual one. I came from north of England, left school pretty early, and I was a professional golfer for a little while. And so, never really thought about sales, never really thought about IT. And when that came to an end, obviously I had to do something to make a living. And one of my friends was working in sales, and he just said, "Look, come and work for me. I'll give you some training, and if you're good, you'll have a job, and if you're bad, I'll sack you." And so that was kind of the first entry into, and it was email marketing. Actually, I was selling email marketing.
Wow. What did that sales training process look like? Can you remember?
I can. It was very interesting. It was on a Monday morning, you would go into the office. Every sales guy would go into the office. You would have the Monday morning sales meeting, kind of saying, "Look, this is what we're going to do this week." And then Monday was cold calling day. And it was one big room, and it was set out like a U, and the sales director would be kind of sat in the middle of the U, and you just all cold called. You were booking appointments for meetings. I covered the south coast of England, and so I was just cold calling, booking appointments. And basically, if he heard you ask a closed question, he would come up and ring a bell in your ear, and you'd be on the phone, like you'd be in the middle of a call. And he'd come and ring a bell in your ear, and that was the highlight of the training. But you quickly learned not to ask close questions.
No, you didn't want that. And the thing is that, obviously we're laughing about this process, but this was real training. Back then, I remember we used to have stuff thrown at us if we said, if we said the wrong thing, or if we asked again, closed questions were really key. Or if we turned an open question into a closed question, have stuff thrown at you. These are valid training techniques,
Yeah.
It worked for us.
I was there for just under a year. And, I can imagine as well, selling email marketing, this is nearly 20 years ago, right? And so hard thing to sell. But I learned a huge amount in that first 12 months. And so finally kind of was doing that. And another friend of mine found out that I'd stopped playing golf, found out I was in sales. They were working for a distributor in the UK, Arrow Electronics. And he called me up and said, "Look, I've heard you're in sales. I've got a job. If you're interested, come and have a chat." And I did that. And so that was kind of my first introduction into IT. So not from a technical background at all. Still not. So
still not, no.
Any questions about products or things like that, that's not me. But that was my first introduction into IT, into distribution, and then really just worked my way up from there.
Yeah. And we talked just offline before about the technical aspect of being in tech sales. And what do you think is important, or I guess really for people to know when it comes to understanding tech? Where do you need to get to be effective in sales versus going beyond that to just feel confident in the fact that you can hold your own conversation?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to know enough to be dangerous, right? I mean, you can't just go in and not know anything. I've tried it. Trust me, it doesn't work. So you've got to be at least confident that you can go and have a conversation around whatever the area is, right? I'm in security. I can go and have a conversation around what we do as a business. But I think then making sure you've got the team around you and knowing how to bring in the subject matter experts as and when the conversation's getting out of your comfort zone. I think that's critical. No one's ever going to shoot you for if you're having a conversation you don't know the answer. Just say you don't know the answer, but make sure you can then go and find out and get the answer for the person, and that builds your brand and your relationship with that person.
Yes, and that makes you the go-to person in that arena as well, because then they'll know that even if you don't know the answer to it, you'll either go and find it or you've got the right resources to do it. And I fully agree with that, because I think, a lot of people, I think, assume, especially when you talk to people about tech sales, they're like, oh, so can you fix my laptop? I'm like, no, there's no way you want me to fix your laptop.
Yeah, every Uber driver that I've ever spoken to has, what do you do for a living? I'm in IT. Oh, my laptop's not working. Can you? No, mate, no, I can't. Sorry.
No, not that kind. The outcome kind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so obviously you've come through that journey. I think everyone in tech sales has got a really unique entry point, into the industry, and especially, into the sales side of the technical industry. And, looking at the distribution element through to vendor, and then obviously your alliance is with partnerships and really engaging with the right people that can drive business. And at the moment, obviously, for essentially CrowdStrike. So you're sitting in the middle of that distribution and partnership element. What do you see the differences between the different sales elements of vendor, disti, and integrator? What are the key components of their requirements?
Yeah, look, I think distribution is. I learned a huge. Well, I've learned a huge amount in every role that I've done. But I think distribution, you are the true middleman, right? Your value to the partners and the vendors is being that connection point, that aggregator, and so it's very, very relationship driven. But you also have to be kind of a jack of all trades as well, right? So you've got to know, again, enough to be dangerous at various things, but be able to then connect the dots. So I think that's critical in distribution. When I think about the vendor role, my job and my team's job in alliances or channel is to help the partners grow their business, right? That's we're obviously, we work for CrowdStrike and we're there to help CrowdStrike grow, but we're also there to help our partners build a business. And so being that subject matter expert, helping understand their go-to-market, understand where their strengths are, understand the customer base that they're trying to sell into, and then helping to kind of mold their business with the help of our technologies is critical. I think from then I think about the systems integrators, resellers, MSPs out there. The key for them is understanding their customers, right? You've got to be solving a problem for the customer. You've got to listen to what are the customer's pain points, and then go and solve for those problems. I mean, it's genuinely not rocket science, and I don't think sales particularly is. It's one of my old mentors used to say it to all the time. You've got two ears and one mouth. Listen twice as hard as you talk. So I kind of do try to think about that as I'm waffling on, but it's you listen to what the customer wants. They'll feed you the ammunition, right? As a salesperson, you need to understand the pain points and then have the bullets to fire back to create the pain and create the urgency in the customer. But the customers love talking about their business. They will give you all the ammunition you want if you listen and you ask the right questions. and then that should, in theory, help you to alleviate the pain and solve the outcome.
And so in that realm, if we're looking at the partnership element, because that's what you're driving, what do you see the difference between a partner that is killing it, with CrowdStrike versus those that are just not quite getting there? What would you say the difference is between those two businesses?
I think have an opinion. I think there's a lot of people that sit on the fence, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of technology out there, right? We're not the only vendor that do what we do. There's a lot of different vendors. There's a lot of different technologies, and I think it's very easy for a salesperson or a business to sit on the fence and go, well, what do you want? And just basically let the customer tell them. I think the partners, certainly in my channel, that are doing well with CrowdStrike have made a decision. The decision is CrowdStrike, and they go all in with us and have that conversation, and we win together and we lose together. So that to me is critical.
And I think, from the time that you and I have had working together as well, is that I think that's always been your advice to anybody of whatever technology is back one horse, go in with that partnership, and you win and lose together. Because if you go in and you're trying to navigate between, I want to try and win, you actually end up losing everything. Because, partnerships that I've seen that are selling, as you've said, there's so much technology out there. You could go in and offer 3 different technologies that solve a similar-ish problem. But if you go in offering all 3, the end user's not going to respect you for doing that. And you think you're trying to back 3 horses and then at least one of them will win, when actually the alternative or the complete opposite happens, where they go, well, I don't really think you understand the technology, or that you can't really advise me. So I'm just going to make my own decision over here, and go with somebody that truly believes in the technology that they are selling, and then can give me their recommended solution.
And look, I think it diminishes the value that you provide to the customer, right? It diminishes your value because they see it then more of just a supermarket price conversation. Oh well, I can pick what I want, and so it's just a low cost sale. Whereas if you have an opinion and you win together, you are seen as that expert who can add value to the customer's business. And also, if you partner with the right vendors, then you get the backing and the profitability in that aspect as well.
Yeah, because they're along for that journey, aren't they? And I did some research into what the actual channel market was designed to create, because I was like, well, as far as I'm aware, channels there to drive market share and awareness, but provide the integrators, resellers with a product or solution to sell that they've not had to create. And then for the vendor side, it means that they've now got this market awareness that they then don't need to then recruit multiple salespeople for. I mean, large vendors like CrowdStrike have a large team, but they don't need to triple that to triple their results. They just need to grow their channel and their partnership. And the reason why I wanted that definition is because, my experience of that channel and vendor partnership has always been around that, we're going to go in here, we're going to get leads from that vendor, and then we're going to win, and then away we go. And I'm like, I don't think that's not quite the way that it was designed for. And the reason why you get the rebate and the kickback and the partnership, and you benefit from all the infrastructure of that vendor, is because you're going to market hand in hand, within that. Would you say that is still something that you're seeing, and the frustration in the channel is that element?
Yeah, I think there's still the commentary is, as a vendor, why do you have channel? Or you need channel to scale. Well, that shouldn't be the only reason. It is a reason. I mean, absolutely, it's more feet on the street, it's more brand, it's more market awareness, absolutely. But equally, you need the partners to give you more context. If you think about it, I'm in security. I don't know everything about a customer's environment. I don't know the infrastructure side. I don't know everything that they're trying to do. I know the security aspect of it. The partner, if they're a trusted partner in their selling across the organization, they can give me context, and it can then help us to try and solve more outcomes for the customer. Whereas, our sales guys are very, very good security sales guys. They're not infrastructure sales guys. So they need that context from our channel partners, and the partners can be incredibly valuable around the services, the professional services, implementation services, ongoing managed services. There's a lot more than just scale that a partner can give to a vendor.
And how are you finding the APG side of looking outside of Australia? What do you see the differences in what makes a great salesperson in Australia versus what you see in China, India, Japan, South Korea? Like, what are the differences? Because I love this topic.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, right? And we're in a very diverse geography, and I think that's, I've been doing APJ now for 5-6 years, something like that. And you have to get used to it. It is, whether you like it or not, Australia does not work the same as Vietnam. It does not work the same as India. And I think when you go into Southeast Asia, North Asia, India, and I'm not actually, I mean, I'm saying all that. The reality is everywhere relationship is critical, but it is absolutely key in some of those markets. Relationships are critical, and then partners partnering together. So it's not even just kind of that linear, vendor, distributor, reseller. If you go to Japan, there's vendor, distributor, partner, customer, right? Because they all had something. So you just take a little bit of getting your head round, and cultural nuance of how you negotiate. Negotiating in India is very different to negotiating a deal in Japan. The pace in which organizations move, Japan is a very conservative culture. Very, very good at adopting technology, but they don't make the decisions quickly. They go through a very deliberate due diligence around technology and decision making. And I think maybe some of the other cultures are a little bit quicker to adopt, quicker to make a decision. They're kind of some of the nuances that I see.
And I guess then being able to align with that, because your channel partners and let's even remove the channel partner element, just the salespeople themselves are having to navigate, the differing in sales cycles, and then also the differing in the process and how long that takes, and what you have to navigate going through. And I guess then, would you say that one of the key attributes to being a top salesperson in this industry is understanding those nuances for the region that they're in, the customers and the industries that they are aligning themselves to? Because we can still see a true difference in return from working with somebody that's working specifically with legal organizations versus those dealing with mining services versus those dealing with something totally different. And so I think even from country to country, state to state, but also industry to industry, it's about then aligning your process with your ideal market.
Yeah, and think about my role. I've kind of I look after APJ, but I obviously spend a lot of time on calls with the US, and so one of the challenges that I have is the US works very, very differently. It's it's a different market altogether, and so part of it is educating some of the global people about how you would do business in Japan. They want to run at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Japan just doesn't do that. And if you try to force a different culture onto a what has been around a very, very long time, you're not going to change Japanese culture overnight. And so you have to adapt. You have to adapt the selling skills. And when if I think about how I am when I go to Japan and when I sit down with a partner and the way that I would talk to them is very, very different to when I would go and sit down with a partner in India and run a conversation there as well. So you've got to adapt. You have to have the ability to adapt to your environment.
Yeah, so interesting. And it's being mindful then of when you're going into that, almost preparing for that type of conversation, so that you're not going in, rushing through it and trying to achieve these results, because it will work against you, not even with you, slowly, just purely against you.
Yeah, and I don't think it's even necessarily just when you're changing countries, right? I mean, I obviously cover different countries, but if you think about, even if you just worked in Australia, know your audience. You know, you go in to speak to a CFO one day, going in to speak to a CISO the next day. You're probably going to act in a slightly different way. You're going to have a different kind of conversation, and so adapting to the audience that you've got in front of you is critical. Whether it's a different culture, language, or even within the same country.
Yeah, interesting. And so, we're seeing a shift in remote salespeople. Obviously post COVID. I don't know if we're still allowed to talk about that. But post that, prior to that, you and I have come up in these office environments where you're in this sales team, you're in the office together. And I know you haven't been in office for quite some time. You're either on a plane, or from some amazing location, which you now call home. So we've seen that true shift. And so, what have you seen, change in the last 4 years of salespeople working remotely, and whether that be in the business that you've worked within, or whether that be in other distributor or partners? What have you seen, and what impact do you think that that's having?
I think the key is how people now consume information and how they would onboard into a new business, and how they learn how that business works. I would say, right? So think about pre-COVID, how you would onboard in a new company. You would go to the office, you would sit down, you'd have a buddy, you'd sit next to him, you'd go to lunch together. It was that kind of whole process. You don't have that now. Or I mean, you do, obviously. I mean, I still do go to our offices across the region. But if I think about how you onboard someone now and how you try and get the information to them, it's got to be a combination of online, face-to-face, over the phone, lots of Zoom meetings. I think the benefit to businesses, and we are a very remote workforce at CrowdStrike, is I think the output of individuals increases. I think there's a lot of distractions when you go in an office. And I know when I go into the office, I get less done than when I'm sat here in my office, because I'm here and that's it. I've got really no distractions. Whereas I think pre-COVID, I think people thought being at home was a distraction. Now I think it's almost the other way. You go into the office and you see people that you're not seeing for 2 months, 3 months, whatever. And that's actually more of a distraction, and you probably get less efficiency. But I think it's horses for courses. I don't think, me going into the office 5 days a week, like that wouldn't suit the way that I work. But equally, I know people who really enjoy going in the office, and them working from home isn't right for them. So I think that is a big benefit of post-COVID, is that flexibility that I think businesses and people have found in the way that they work. I think has been a positive step, not a negative.
Yeah. And how are you seeing the output of those sales teams? Now, you talked there about the performance element, but in terms of output, and then also how does that connect then into the outreach results? Because obviously then you're also dealing with businesses on the other side that are also very similar in terms of their remote work, and therefore they're not at a desk, and so therefore the direct line isn't there, and it's now a mobile, and they're not necessarily in the office to catch up for a coffee. Like, what are you seeing in that realm?
Yeah, it's hard, right? I think it depends on kind of where you are as a salesperson, whether you're an inside salesperson, SDR, external account manager, that kind of thing. There's always got to be that element with a customer of meeting them face to face, building that relationship. Building a relationship on Zoom is never going to be the same as building it face to face. It's just not. So you have got to have a balance. I think, if I think about the way I work, CrowdStrike get a lot more out of me being sat here, and the amount of time I spend on Zoom calls, on the phone, to the point where if I'm traveling, like my boss will call me and he's like, well, I need to meet with you. I need actual time to get in between meetings because I'm on the road. Whereas here, and you see it in your calendar, right? You'll get invites and they just go in your calendar and they're just back to back to back. all day, every day. And it's like, well, I actually do need some time to go to the bathroom or to grab
make that all important cup of tea.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's you've got to. I mean, ultimately, you have to try and find a balance as well as an individual. You know, I spend a lot of times in various time zones, and so you know, I'll sometimes start at like 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m. But then you've got to break the day up a little bit. So finding the balance in a post-COVID world is critical, because otherwise, I think I've seen people who just burn out because it is all the time on the phone in front of a computer screen, and that's not healthy, right? That's not healthy for you as an individual, but it's not healthy for you as a salesperson either, because you just can't sustain that pace. So finding a way to have that kind of balance is critical as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And for you then, so giving somebody advice, you've come through those ranks and you've been in sales, you know, for a long time. What would you say if you had to pass on one piece of advice or insight in terms of being a salesperson and being of that top tier of salesperson? What would you recommend that they focus on, or what piece of advice would you give them?
I think, as I've said, relationship is critical, but trust is key. I would hope, if you asked any of the people that I've worked with over the years, that's the one thing that I've always tried to build my brand on is if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. If I can't do it, I'll tell them. And you try and set that expectation. And as I said earlier, if you don't know something, don't pretend. Like, you'll get caught out. And so people will respect you a lot more if you just said, look, I don't know that, but you know what? I know something. Let me go and find out, and I'll come back to you, and I'm going to do it within this timeline. It just that for me, I think is critical as a salesperson. And then the other part is understanding what is the customer actually wanting, whoever you're talking to. And when I say customer, it's not even just necessarily the person you're selling to. Everyone in my mind is a customer, and you try and work out what's important to them, so that they work out the best way to work together. Both, you know, people inside CrowdStrike and the partners and the customers try and figure out what's important to people, and you know, they'll respect that a lot more as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And great insights. But thank you so much for sharing a little bit into your world of tech sales, and I guess really your journey and what you're experiencing today. And I think there's some really interesting insights for, you know, for those that are either in the industry or looking to get in, or looking just to improve in some way, shape or form. So thank you so much for taking time out, because I know you are extremely busy, and great to have you on Australian time zone, Australian soil. And awesome to be connected again. Thanks, Jon.
No problem at all. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for tuning into the Sell Like You podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and be sure to subscribe to never miss another one. A huge thank you to Vitality House for hosting today's recording, and I look forward to being back into your ears soon.